Welcome to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio.
Hello, everybody. This is Ken Hoffman. You're listening to Ag Matters. I'm a farmer out in Palmer. My business's name is Matsu Microgreens, and I'm also the executive director of the Matsu Farm Bureau. Folks want to learn about agriculture, you should totally join the Farm Bureau. We're a cool group of people. If you want to learn more, you can always visit our website, alaskafb.org, or you could email me directly at matsufarmbureau@gmail.com. And if you guys have any listener out there has any good agriculture stories or gardening advice, please email me and we'll try to get you on the show. So today we have two folks calling in. We have John and Nick from Pacific Kelp Company. And thank you, John. Thank you, Nick, for coming on and telling us about your company. If you wouldn't mind starting when you started the company and how you guys started it and why you guys got into kelp. I'll start with John.
Yeah, I appreciate the time and really excited to talk to your listeners on your show. So myself and Nick are Pacific Kelp Company. We started Pacific Kelp Company about, almost 3 years ago at this point. We originally met in college and were friends for 10 years, and we were working in the corporate world, and we decided to quit our jobs because we wanted to do something that we were more passionate about and something that was, good for the environment. That was really our motivating force. So we looked at a lot of different businesses. We looked at microgreens, we looked at spirulina, we looked at on-land seaweed, and of course, ocean seaweed. And we thought that ocean seaweed, or kelp, was the most exciting because not only the positive environmental benefits growing kelp in the ocean, but also just the number of things that you can do with kelp that are really positive and really cool. Ag products is one of those big things that you can make out of kelp. That's what we're doing right now. We're making a product called KelpX, which is a liquid kelp biostimulant. It's great for soil health, great for plants, and it's a really, really cool product that we've just brought to market in the last couple of months. We're really excited about it.
Wow, amazing. Nick, are you guys producing any products for human consumption, or is all of your kelp going into this product, KelpX?
Not for human consumption. That's a tough market where you got to compete with Asia on. And we grow specifically Macrocystis perifera, or the giant kelp, and we think that lends itself better to agricultural products. Some people have told us it's a little too salty, doesn't taste too great when they eat it, so we decided to shift and focus mainly on agriculture. My background is I grew up in the Northeast on a garlic farm, so it's great to be able to kind of combine two of my passions, kelp and growing things in the ocean, and marrying that with what farmers are doing in soil and on the land.
Amazing. Where is your guys' farm located? It's in the ocean, but what town, what city is it nearby?
We're calling in from Ketchikan, and the farm is still actually in construction right now. So we expect to be sort of seeding and harvesting probably this time next year or summer 2026. And the farm is a little bit south of town. It's about 25 miles south of Ketchikan in the ocean.
In the ocean. Okay. This is super cool. So I've been a vegetable farmer for many, many years, and I have a similar story. I started off in the corporate world, decided it wasn't that much fun. So I started farming and got into microgreens. So it's been working out for me. I don't know anything about sea vegetables. When you say seeding and planting and harvesting, what is that process? What's the life cycle of farming kelp?
So it all starts with what we would call a seed. The people in the industry would call it a sporophyte, but it's essentially a juvenile kelp, and you can produce, millions of these things in a hatchery, and there's a couple of hatcheries around Alaska that we work with. But essentially the way the process works is you go out into the ocean and you get the reproductive tissue from natural kelp beds. You take that reproductive tissue to a kelp hatchery. They are able to get that reproductive tissue to start working. It starts reproducing in the hatchery, and you can grow out tens of millions of these sporophytes. They're little microscopic versions of the kelp plants. From there, you can get those sporophytes to settle onto ropes or physical, sturdy object. You can take those ropes or whatever you've got the kelp to settle on out to the ocean, and then you physically put those ropes in the water or put those physical objects on your farm, and then the kelp begins to grow in the ocean. From there, it takes about 9 months for our species to grow into maturity. And that means, you're going from less than 1 millimeter size to 100 feet. So it's pretty remarkable growth in just 7 or 8 or 9 months. And then it's ready to be harvested. The species that we use is a perennial. So what we like to say is we're just giving it a haircut when we go and harvest it. So if the kelp is 100 feet tall, we're taking off the top 20, 30 feet and leaving the rest to regrow. And usually these individuals last for around 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
We like to think of ourselves as sort of kelp forest managers. So we go out there and basically create a habitat where we can create a new kelp forest. Kelp has been under pressure just with climate, rising water temperatures, urchins, all of these type of things. So, we're going out there and trying to add incremental kelp into the world.
Amazing. So to me, it almost sounds like a perennial orchard using fruit lingo. So you're planting the plants and then you're just going to be harvesting it every year, or is it every other year? Also, are you guys continuing to plant, or is there a certain point where you'll be done planting, done sitting the ropes in the water, and you just harvest?
Yeah, I think we're excited to learn all of that. This will be our first time farming macrocystis, so the nitty-gritty details of how often we're harvesting and how many times we need to reseed in a given period. Those are all things that we need to learn, do firsthand. In our experience, most people are getting at least 1 to 2 harvests per seeding, but we're doing it a little bit differently up here in Alaska. We had a little bit different setup on our farm, a little bit wider spacing, and so we're interested to see, can we get to 3, 4, 5 years without reseeding?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the terminology. You guys use the word kelp, but I know hardly anything. Is there a difference between kelp and seaweed and, let's say, algae, spirulina? What are the differences between those things?
Yeah, it's a good question. Kelp is a macroalgae. People are probably familiar with the microalgae, sort of your pond scum, stuff like that. Kelp is a macroalgae, so technically it's not a plant. And it is a seaweed, so all kelps are seaweeds. Seaweeds come in 3 types, red, green, and brown, and kelps are brown seaweeds. All kelps are seaweeds, not all seaweeds are kelp.
Okay. And then you said spirulina earlier, if you wouldn't mind telling the listeners what that is, because it's similar, right?
Spirulina is just a microalgae, so it's single cell or smaller communities of individual algae versus macroalgae are multicellular organisms and much, much bigger, I guess is what I would say. One individual is a lot larger.
Got it. And I know some spirulina it's green, right? People use it for health.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I put it in my smoothies every morning, my green drink. So spirulina is good for you as well.
Okay. And then you guys also said that it's possible to grow kelp on land. What does that process look like? Is it giant totes of water?
Yeah, this is a bit more nascent, I would say, than the ocean farming of kelp, but it essentially requires you to take the ocean water, pump it into an on-land facility, and constantly be recirculating that ocean water. I don't think people are doing it for the giant kelp just because the space considerations would make it really difficult, but they do it for sort of the smaller seaweeds. Dulse is a species that they do it for. So it's typically done in like big tanks on land right next to the ocean where they pump up the water, and it's just a different style of cultivation.
Got it. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about your product. If you wouldn't mind describing your product in detail and what it's used for.
Yeah, I'll start, and I'm sure Nick will fill me in. So yeah, the product is KelpX. It's a liquid kelp biostimulant, and it's used for overall plant health and growth, plant vigor, root development, as well as soil health. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the hormones, the growth hormones that are naturally occurring within the kelp species, and we're extracting those out as part of our process, and we're creating a very concentrated liquid that can then be sprayed on or dripped into the soil, and you're essentially giving those hormones that are within the kelp to your terrestrial plants. And that's, providing positive signals for the plant to grow its root network, or to prime it for tolerance to stress, or to prime it to grow larger. So that's really what we're using the product for today.
And the other thing we're really excited about is on the organic side, what we've been seeing is that kelp extracts and some of the compounds found within kelp, such as the growth hormones, or there's a lot of carbohydrates in kelp, actually. On a dry basis, about 50% of the content is sugars, carbohydrates. And those act as a really, really good food for microbes in the soil. So there's a lot of focus now on soil health in both organic as well as regenerative farming as you get away kind of from the conventional side. And people are really liking it because it gives that extra boost to the microbiome found in soil. And that just helps to break down more nutrients in the soil, make them more readily available for the plants to uptake. I mean, you just get overall better yields, healthier plants, and more ability to withstand the various stressors that they can face in their day-to-day.
Wow. Have you guys done any testing with your product, like a side-by-side comparison of say, a cabbage without the KelpX and then a cabbage with KelpX? Or have other farmers been trying it?
We can talk all day about all the trials we have going on. I think we are in nearly 100 or so different trials right now with all types of farms, different sizes, commercial, hobbyists, whatever it may be. And we are seeing some really good results. We also grow here at home. We've got a little hydroponic setup. We're kind of constrained in Petrocan where there's not great soil and it's very rocky, but we just grew a large zucchini plant and did a side-by-side, and you can just notice how much larger the plant is itself and the buds it was producing, as well as just the root growth. Then we've worked with a couple commercial nurseries as well, who some of their biggest issues are with plant propagation, which is you take a trimming from a mother plant, like a mature plant, and they try to make it root and create essentially a clone of that next plant. Some plants are very stubborn and don't want to set out roots, but what they've been finding when they add our product, it kind of signals to that trimming, that cutting, to then, hey, I need to start directing energy to roots, and it really helps kickstart the plant. And we're working with two really, really awesome universities as well in multi-year studies, one with Cornell University studying our effects on turf grass, and then also with Washington State University, and they're doing on-field trials at commercial vineyards for wine grapes, both in eastern Washington as well as Napa Valley. And those are ongoing, but we're getting some really, really great early results. And like, for example, at the Cornell study, one of the things we're looking at is can kelp extracts help plants deal with things like drought stress? And that might not be an issue in southeastern Alaska where we get 2 out of 3 days rain a year, but in places like California where there's big ag markets and they struggle with, rain and water, what we're finding with Cornell is you can spray our thing on, and if we put rain out shelters on them so basically rain can't hit the grass, they're actually finding our grass outperforms the untreated. It's much greener, much thicker, better look, more lush, and much better root structure. So we're definitely starting to get some of our initial trial data coming in, and so far the results have been extremely positive and promising.
Okay, so you guys are shipping this product throughout the lower 48.
Correct.
Okay, and where can people purchase this product? Is it directly from you, or is there a large distributor you guys are working with?
That's something we're working to set up right now. Hopefully by the end of this call, we'll get on our horse and start building our on-store website. So people in Alaska that want to try it out can purchase directly from us. But right now, it's mostly through partners that we're doing these trials with. We're looking for distributors to pick us up, setting up distribution in the Seattle area so we can access the lower 48. But we are still setting up all that infrastructure today.
Fascinating stuff. Wow. So I know people have been throwing on kelps and seaweeds on their gardens for many, many years. In particular, Scotland, I know they do that in their croft farms. The folks that live on the islands will gather up seaweed and throw it on their vegetable fields. So this is pretty fascinating stuff. Are you guys one of the first, say, commercial enterprises that is actually making an extract available for sale?
Yeah, that's a good question. To your point, people have been doing this, for I think there's even records of the Romans doing this, 2,000 years ago. So it's not new. But what I would say is we're extracting it. So I would say our process is relatively novel. We essentially took some very fancy, complicated machinery from the pharmaceutical industry, and we're using that to create what we believe is the highest quality kelp extract on the market. But we are not the first people to sell kelp products. As you mentioned, those have been around for close to 50, 60 years in the U.S. and longer overseas. But the way that we produce the kelp and the kelp itself, the Alaskan giant kelp, the Macrocystis pyrifera, that is relatively novel.
Amazing.
Just throwing kelp on your garden or on your fields is great. All the stuff that is in the seaweed will eventually break down and get into your soil, but that takes time. What we're doing is kind of speeding up that process, breaking down the cell walls of the kelp to release the nutrients that are found within. And by doing that, we're making into what we like to call more bite-sized or smaller particles that make the compounds found within kelp more bioavailable and easy to absorb by plants. So it's a faster acting than if you were to just take raw seaweed from the ocean and toss it on your garden.
Okay. So let's say just a normal home gardener here in Alaska wants to use your Kelp X. They can purchase it off your website, you said, or eventually they will. But how big is the bottle? And then is it a concentrate where you dilute it with water? How many gallons of product can you get out of it? And then how would you, say, use it on your cabbage plants? Foliar, or do you mix it in the soil? What are the instructions of use?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to take this one. So right now we're selling Kelpex in a variety of sizes depending on who the customer could be. We're selling sort of the more, I'd say, consumer small parcel side. We have a 1 liter jug and a 2-gallon jug. But then for the more commercial industrial side, we have a 55-gallon offering and a 275-gallon IBC tote. So much bigger sizes. But for the home gardeners out there, the 1 liter and 2 gallons are perfect for what you guys would need. And it is a concentrate, so generally we recommend diluting anywhere from 1 to 250 to 1 to 1,000.
Wow.
So that means for 1 gallon of water, you could be putting in 1 to 3 teaspoons of our extract. So a little bit goes a long, long way. If you bought 1 gallon of the kelp extract, it could make up to 1,000 gallons, basically, of diluted product or whatever you could put on your garden. In terms of application, We've seen really good results both as a foliar spray, so spraying it on the leaves, as well as if they actually inject it or drip it directly into the soil. It really depends by crop or what you're trying to get out of the plant, but generally, either application, we've seen really, really good results. For home gardeners, I think one of the things we're most excited about, and we're testing this out ourselves, is for transplants. As we talked about earlier, kelp really helps plants trigger their sort of defense and stress mechanisms. So transplanting plants can cause a lot of stress. You're moving it, you're uptaking the roots from the soil, and so spraying it on right as you transplant or before can help kind of prime that plant for when it goes into its new potting, new soil, new raised bed, whatever it may be. And the other thing we're really excited about is kind of just promoting bigger harvests. We have some guys in Montana and other places in the lower 48 that are using it, guys who grow like the big vegetables. Think about the massive pumpkins. I know there's a handful of them up in kind of Anchorage, Fairbanks area, but they're seeing some phenomenal growth in their pumpkins, just like trying to make award-winning massive pumpkins. And they're using it right now and loving it. So a couple things we're really excited about for the home gardener.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know you guys are testing it out on application, but do you guys recommend like one use, say around the transplanting, or use it every other week, every week, just to drip it in their irrigation constantly? What have you guys noticed? Is too much like a bad thing?
We haven't really hit what they call the phytotoxicity level, which is meaning is the plant getting too much of something that it shuts down and ultimately dies. We haven't run into that. We've even applied it at the undiluted concentration on plants and saw no issues. That said, we have seen the best results, if you do either every week or every 2 weeks. There are some key timings when I think you should apply, such as a transplant. If you're doing any sort of seedlings or seed germination, it really helps kind of kickstart that root development and in early stages of growth. Promoting really healthy, dense roots is what's going to ensure kind of the best grow or best results. So we think starting from the very beginning and kind of going until harvest makes sense, but a little bit does go a long way. So I would say every week or every 2 weeks, reapply.
Okay, cool. So how can people follow what you guys are doing and be updated on when it will be available for sale?
Yep, no, that's a good question. So we're online. We're at www.pacifickelp.co, not .com, .co. And from there, we have a KelpX page. For now, since we're not quite yet selling on our website, you can sign up to our dedicated email list for KelpX, and as soon as it's available for sale, you'll get an email, and then you'll be able to purchase KelpX. If you're more of a commercial user, a larger farm, somebody who would be purchasing the 55-gallon or the 275-gallon, feel free to send us an email directly at info, @pacifickelp.co, and we're happy to talk with you about getting you some bulk product. In addition to that, we're on Instagram. You can follow us at Pacific Kelp Co. We started posting some results from some of our trials, and we're on LinkedIn as well. So you can find us on LinkedIn at Pacific Kelp Co.
All right, amazing. Any final comments you want our listeners to know about KelpX and kelp in general?
Yeah, just on the hydroponic side, I don't think we've talked about that yet, but we are seeing really phenomenal results in hydroponics. So if you are a hydroponic grower, one of the issues that we've heard from people in the market is that previously with other types of kelp products, there had been a lot of issues with clogging. What we've done is we've invested a lot of time and money into creating this really clarified, pure liquid product. There's no solid particles in there. We ran an analysis on our particle size within the liquid, and I think 99% of our particles were the size of a human red blood cell, so extremely small, so no issues at all with clogging. And so that has been something that I think has stopped hydroponic growers before from using a lot of kelp product, but that's not an issue with our product. So I would say that's another area that we're really excited about. You can put us right into the tank if you're a hydroponic grower and feed us right to your plants, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, I'd just add, we're always looking for more partners to trial the product and give us feedback. So if you are a commercial farmer up here in Alaska or wherever you're listening from, please reach out. You'd be happy to talk, learn a little bit more about your operations, and even send over a sample to try out. I think really just trying to learn as much as we can at this stage and see how the product works for various crops, various growing regions, growing climates. And the last plug I'll say is, you said you grew microgreens, small juvenile plants and seedlings. That's where we've seen some of the best benefits. So maybe we got to get you some KelpX as well to help with your microgreens.
For sure. I was going to ask about that, if you notice anything on plants that are smaller than a cotyledon. So that'd be exciting. Maybe I'll reach out to you guys. So
yeah, absolutely. Happy to send you a free sample.
That would be super cool. Okay, cool. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I learned a lot. This was super fascinating. I think, you're definitely the first kelp farmers I had ever talked to. So thank you so much, John and Nick. And thank you, everybody else, for listening to Ag Matters. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You've been listening to Ag Matters, covering positive agriculture stories from across Alaska on Big Cabbage Radio. Ag Matters is a production of Radio Free Palmer, recorded at our studios in Palmer, Alaska. For more information about this program, email manager@radiofreepalmer.org.